Hey, Sooner Nation, welcome back. Welcome back to another Champion Standard podcast. So Rob and I are back today for a little recruiting update. We're going to have our special guest here on a second. Before we do that, please like, subscribe, follow us. You can see all the socials down below, and then our website, championstandard.com. Really appreciate everybody that's following. It's been a lot of fun and continues to be a lot of fun. And we're about 6 weeks away from football season. So that's when the real fun begins. Yeah. Midsummer. Here we go. We got a commitment yesterday. Floyd Boucard, and we'll bring in our recruiting insider, Chris Mason, to talk about that a little bit. How's it going, Chris?
It's going great. Very happy that OU got Floyd Boucard from Miami Central via Quebec, Canada.
Another Canadian.
Yep.
We don't stop at the borders, do we?
No, and it's funny that OU has had a previous Canadian defensive tackle in Neville Gallimore in our recent football history. So
right. Floyd's out of Miami, so it's always nice to pluck a guy out of Miami too. That never hurts.
Yeah, and the Miami fans will tell you that they weren't interested in him, that they backed off him. But you see this first play where I think he actually killed that guy. He's consistently in the opponent's backfield. He plays a lot of. This is his highlights from. He played in Alabama last year. He played for, let me get the name of the place. Mobile Christian High School. I guess that's a private school. They're a 3A school in Alabama, and they went 15-0 last season. And Floyd had 85 tackles, 22 tackles for loss, and 11 sacks. And as you can see, he plays primarily 3-4, three down line defensive end for them last year. Although he does play in the middle sometimes. You see him here, just stuffing the run here. I had the privilege of talking to Floyd back in February before he blew up and became a national recruit. He told me at the time he was 6'4", 295 pounds.
Good
and he had been timed recently, and I don't know if that's a laser hand time, I'm not sure, but he'd been timed in a sub 4.8 40.
Oh my goodness.
Dang.
Which when you watch these highlights, you can kind of believe it. He's consistently in the opponent's backfield on almost every highlight. He's so quick and agile for such a big guy. I mean, look at that stunt move there where he just
little tech stunt,
just blew right through everyone. And he's out on the edge here. He probably, obviously, he's probably he could play 3 technique or nose guard, I think, for OU. You could even, if OU does some big 3-4 looks, he could even play defensive end, I think, for you. Just a lot of positional versatility. And when you combine him with the 2 guys also in the defensive line class who have very fixed roles, right? So you have Trent Wilson, who's a great 3 technique. So with Floyd, you can leave Trent Wilson at 3. You don't have to try and turn him into something he's not. And then you've got Kamori Moore, who I think with a redshirt year and some time can be a very productive nose guard for OU. He's a nose guard all the way. He'll be 6'1", 300+ pounds. Kamori has a huge wingspan, so I like to compare him to, just imagine if OU had able to get 4 years out of Isaiah Coe, or if actually, had actually been a redshirt Isaiah Coe as a freshman, and then you've got Todd Bates developing him for 4 years. I think that's what Kamori Moore's kind of ceiling is. I think Floyd's ceiling is unreal. I mean, when I look at this film and I compare it to the other guys that are out there in terms of this 25 defensive line class, you have the 2 sort of mutant freaks from Georgia at defensive tackle in Elijah Griffin and Justice Terry. Then after that, you have Malik Autry, who's from Alabama. He's currently going to Auburn, Ohio State. And he's a top 30 5-star guy. You put those 3 guys aside, Floyd Boucard is as good as any big defensive tackle in the country.
He wears that weight well too, man. Like he does not look like he's 300. He wears it well. Like he's not a little pudgy guy at all. Like he's wearing it good, man. And he's like you said, he's just tearing it up on this film. I mean, we're like 8 minutes in now or 6 minutes in or so, and he's like you said, the highlights don't stop. Like he's
in the backfield. And so if you're talking like big defensive tackles, right? So someone who's, I would say 6'3", 290 plus in high school. He's better than anybody in Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri, or Kansas, or what you would sort of loosely. I mean, look at that play. Just loosely identify as OU's sort of region in recruiting. If you call that OU's region in recruiting, he's better than any of those guys on film. And Todd Bates seems to agree with me there because he offered Boucard in January. And the only other guys, big defensive tackles that OU really pursued were Joshua Sharma from California, who ended up at Oregon, that Texas really wanted. And, obviously they made a Hail Mary recruiting offer to Malik Autry, but it never really went anywhere. And OU kind of kicked the tires on a Texas prospect called DJ Sanders, whose recruiting has kind of like seemed to go nowhere. I guess maybe he's just going to A&M and no one's bothering to recruit him. But he's the only other guy I think that, is maybe close to Boucard. I mean, obviously there's guys like Landon Rink who were 3 techs that OU offered. Landon Rink's going to A&M. But I think at 3 tech, Trent Wilson's better than Cole Brewer, Landon Rink, or any of the other 3 techs that OU was really looking at. The McKay Williams-Lee kid. The only other bigger defensive tackle I think was close to Boucard was Christian Evans, who ended up verbaling to Virginia Tech. He was supposed to visit, and he chose Va-Tech instead. But even he, in high school, he's 6'3", 280, moves really well, great frame, but he's not, Floyd apparently right now is maybe 6'4", 310, 315. And just, he won the Rivals, had a Miami camp. He was the defensive line MVP there, just dominating everybody. That's when he started getting all his offers. I mean, he had offers from Alabama, Georgia. OU beat Miami, Bama, USC for his verbal commitment. He's got an interesting backstory. His family's originally from Haiti. They emigrated to Quebec, Canada. And then then his family arranged for him to basically be an exchange student in Mobile, Alabama to play football.
Huh.
And then after his year there, he wanted to, he wanted to play some tougher competition. So his family, I believe, was able to arrange an exchange student situation with a family friend in the Miami area. So lots of people are like, well, Miami Central's a Miami, Florida feeder school. I'm like, well, they are. Yeah. But he's not from Miami. It's not like he's been watching Miami. He's very much, when I talked to Floyd, he was already very impressed with Todd Bates and Brent Venables when he met them in person in Miami. They were on a recruiting trip in January when the open period, when they're supposed to be recruiting 24 kids, OU was already recruiting 25 kids. They were scouting and evaluating 25 kids in the Miami area and met Floyd. And Floyd was super impressed with them. And I really think this is sometimes you think OU wins because of brand name and distance. Sometimes it's just distance with Oklahoma. Kids in the Dallas area or in Oklahoma know the OU brand name. But this was really a culture fit win for Oklahoma. Floyd really fits in beautifully with what Brent and Todd Bates are really pushing in terms of soul mission, the complete adult student kind of profile that Brent's always preaching. We want to make you the best player off the field and best player on the field, best person off the field. And I think that message really resonated with Floyd and his family. And I think it was a big reason why, because he visited USC, and I think USC kind of put on a glitz and glam visit. and for a kid.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, for a kid, we know how Lincoln works, right? The heavy,
right, yeah,
the heavy sell, heavy push.
Yeah, I'm not on the X often, but I remember seeing like all the Boucard to USC and the eyes or whatever.
Silent commit. I think they brought in Aaron Donald on campus too, and just
because
okay.
USC has a former Rams defensive line coach by the name of Henderson. So they did the heavy, I'm sure they did the glitz and glam on the visit, right? Like this is LA, So I think for any 17-year-old kid, I think that sells really well for the weekend, right? It's really good while you're there. Are you going to commit to us? Oh yeah, man, I love this. But then he came back from his visit. Talked with his family and then made the OU visit. And then I think OU grabbed a bigger lead there. And I think actually Trent Wilson probably helped to a certain degree as well, just because they seem to be kind of connected on social media. David Stone obviously played a big role in his recruitment. You can see David and Trent in the same in his uniform photos, along with Jaden Jackson, the uni photos they do. And Jaden Jackson and David Stone are both in those. I got zero confirmation of this, but it wouldn't shock me if Eddie Pierre-Louis also didn't have a conversation, because Eddie Pierre is obviously he has a Haitian background as well. So his family emigrated to the Tampa area from Haiti. So second year in a row that OU has got a verbal commitment / signed a lineman who has family roots back to recent family roots back to Haiti. Yeah, he's the bottom. Awesome. The guy on the bottom is Floyd Boucard, with obviously number 6 to his just above him to his, looking at it from on the left side, from our perspective on the left. That's Trent Wilson, and that's Alex Shield Knight, and then that's Kamori Moore, and then that's CJ Nixon. And obviously they haven't quite got the perspective right on these things a little bit. Kamori Moore's not that small.
Right.
He looks about 5'9" in that photo.
Looks like he's Ryan.
So he's bigger than that, and obviously Alex Shield Knight is. I don't think he's that big against Trent Wilson. But it was a big win for OU, another win for Todd Bates, and I personally, Rivals has Floyd as the number 17 defensive lineman in the country. I think that's still too low, but probably a little more realistic than the number 44 defensive lineman in the country that On3 and 247 have him as, which is just, again, just like Darius Afalava. If you can find 43 defensive linemen in the country better than Floyd Boucard, you are a better person. I mean, I've watched a lot of video of the best defensive linemen in the country. And like I said, the only big tackle I would say that is definitively better on paper on video than Floyd is Malik Autry. You were looking for a high ceiling comp. I kind of went around and around about this, but how about, and it's a guy that actually played OU. I would go with Derek Brown from Auburn, who's currently with the Carolina Panthers. Who OU somehow managed to block well enough to allow P. Ryan and Mixon to run wild over the Auburn Tigers back in 2016. But Derek Brown is he's 6'4", 310, 315. Boucard's it's his agility and lateral quickness that I think just jumps off his film. And this is, I use the Neville Gallimore phrase. So imagine if Neville Gallimore was coached by Todd Bates and Schmitty, right? Coached up by Todd Bates and Schmitty, right? And then imagine if Neville Gallimore was 6'4", 315, not, Neville was 6'2", 290 maybe
6'2",
at a best.
Yeah.
Best, and he was still an NFL draft pick. But Boucard's ceiling is it's not David Stone's ceiling, but it's in a category just below that, in my opinion.
Dang. So that's like, so 2 back-to-back classes. I mean, do you remember a class, back-to-back classes like this on the interior defensive line that were like this with David Stone, Jaden Jackson, Trenton Wilson, and Boucard? Or you got to go back to McCoy and Granger, maybe? Like,
well,
I
they
don't know.
were.
It seems like it's been a while since we've like stacked. Usually we'll get one, but it takes 2 or 3 cycles. But this is like back to back.
Yeah, and I think Granger and McCoy were back-to-back years. I think that's right.
Okay.
Obviously, Dusty and Tommy. We didn't follow up Dusty and Tommy with a pair like that. We just didn't. You got Lynn Magruder as a transfer from Tennessee, who was very productive for OU. You had Carl Pendleton from Tulsa area, I believe. I want to say Carl's from like Glenpool, but I may have that wrong. It's been a long time since I brought up the name Carl Pendleton. But yeah, you had Mo Dampier, who was highly ranked, but he was a year or 2 after Tommy and Dusty. So if you're talking like directly back to back, OU hasn't signed a pair I think has as much potential back to back in a long time. Josh from Sooner Scoop on X was talking about the fact that, for a stretch of time, OU was averaging like a 3.8 star rating for defensive tackles from like 2000 to 2010 or something like that. And then after that, and then like from 2013 to 2021, OU's average was down to like 3.5 or 3.4, and now it's back up under Bates to back up to I think it's at 3.85 now at this point. So I mean, it's a huge to go back to back like this. And I've been talking a lot about the 26 recruiting starting to heat up, and of course next weekend OU on this coming week on Thursday, OU will have a 2026 event, and one of the guys scheduled to be there is 5-star defensive tackle Tank Carrington from Bishop Gorman, who's actually moved to Bishop Gorman. He's a 3-tech, and he was actually from the DMV, the Maryland, Virginia area, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So he's supposed to be on campus for the weekend. And then, you've got Taj Overton, who I think is a top 100 defensive tackle from Owasso, who's part of the 26 class. OU's made some key offers to players like Danny Beal, who's from Arkansas. And before you're like, well, OU doesn't pull players from Arkansas. Well, we just pulled 2 safeties from Arkansas. So it's a time, you're catching Arkansas at a good time to maybe pull another player. And Danny's a 6'4", 300-pound big defensive tackle. And then you had a couple of guys during the OU summer camp sessions that OU offered that are 26 defensive linemen that they appear to be, involved in. Joseph Terry, who was the surprise guy who showed up, 6'5", 275, D tackle. And then a guy I'm only going to refer to as T.I. He's a Polynesian, family's Polynesian defensive tackle from the Colorado area, who's like 6'3", 315. And he was also at OU's summer camp session, picked up an offer and seems to have OU in his top group. So OU's well on the way to making it back to back to back in terms of
that would be
defensive line classes, which would put OU. I think you're that's when you're starting to build the same kind of defensive line talent that Brent could rely upon at Clemson. Another recruiting class away from being off the portal defensive tackle merry-go-round.
Yeah, you got to get off that merry-go-round.
Yeah, I mean,
got to develop internally and keep them. And
it's just more effective. It's more effective from an NIL standpoint, and and again, I mean, I brought this up on another podcast, and Chris on Under the Horns Down didn't like it as much. But if we think about it, we're this could be, I mean, it could be DJ Hicks in 23, Stone in 24, Jaden Jackson in 24. I mean, we're not that far away from it should be, Todd Bates won the DJ Hicks recruiting battle. He won that.
Yeah.
So you're very close to that defensive line front being, stacked in that regard. So, Trent Wilson was the number 24 player in the nation in the early rankings. He's fallen down because he's not 6'4", 6'5", and he doesn't run like Elijah, Griffin or Justice Terry. And he's not as big as Malik Autry. But, when you talk about three techs, Trent Wilson is the real deal as a three tech. He'll be 6'3", 290, 295, and just be blazing fast off the ball. Everyone's like, gotta have 300. I get a little frustrated when everyone says, you gotta have 300-pound defensive tackles everywhere. I'm like, well, those help, but if you're playing the OU scheme, you need a blazing fast off the snap three tech. And and you don't need that person. I mean, if that person is 315 and does that, great. But if that person's like Grayson Holton, everyone's like, why isn't Grayson Holton 300 pounds? And I'm like, well, Grayson Holton at 290 might be exactly what you need at three tech. Tommy Harris and Dusty Dvorak were 275 pounds as freshmen, and they both, blew up Big 12 play. And we're talking, everyone's like, well, football's changed. Yeah, they were getting pounded by K-State and Nebraska's, option offensive lines that were putting up yards on everybody. But they were, but they beat up those offensive lines. So your three tech just as, I'm not saying any of these guys are Aaron Donald, but Aaron Donald is the best defensive lineman in college and pro football the last 7 years, and he's 285 pounds. Of course, he's Aaron Donald, but I'm just saying that
he makes a living with his hand strength and his first step. And his speed, his first step is unreal. It's something you don't see. You see maybe once every 10 years.
Yeah, Tommy was like that. He would have been like that in the pros before he got injured. Tommy was on his way to like a defensive MVP kind of year with the Bears. So a lot of our younger OU fans don't remember Tommy the way he really was, and he was just unbelievable as a three tech around 280, 285 pounds, and he dominated college football at that weight. Yeah. So he would dominate today at that weight because he was like, he would dominate today because he'd be sacking quarterbacks left and right.
Right.
Yeah. Jaden Jackson came in a little undersized, and he's came in and held his own nicely this spring.
Yeah, and David Stone at 295 is probably, if you want him at 300, fine, but I think 295, 300 is about the perfect weight for David to get everything you want out of him. So, but to recap with Floyd Boucard, I think Floyd can play nose for you. He can play three tech. He could play 3-4 defensive end, and that kind of flexibility when you combine him with Wilson and Moore, who have fixed roles, and then you've got Boucard, who can do probably a little bit of everything. I think that just gives you – that's 3 defensive linemen in the class. They signed at least 3 defensive tackles in the class, 2 defensive tackles in the class last year, 2 in the class before. You're just building depth at the defensive tackle position. You sign 2 or 3 more next year, and then, you're getting to that point where – and again, I believe Todd Bates has done a good job with our defensive tackles that he's had so far. I think you'll see an improved year from DeJoun Terry this year. You'll see improvement from Holton. I don't think Todd Bates in the training and development part of football is in college football, really takes a back seat to no one, I think. So I think you're giving him a 6'4", 310-pound defensive tackle who can move like that. And then everyone's like, well, he's super raw. I'm like, okay, yeah, but we now have a guy who can develop him. So what's the problem?
Right. Well, dang, man, future is bright for that interior defensive line group. I mean, you've got, like you said, the DeJoun Terry and Dominic Williams this year, and then next year you're going to have David Stone and Jaden Jackson, and then next year you're going to have Boucard. And we're just getting to a point where we're going to have, like you mentioned, the Clemson lines where they just kept reloading. They were developing and reloading. Daquan Bowers, Shaq Lawson. He had just kept going down the line. They just never stopped.
Christian Wilkins.
Christian Wilkins.
The guy whose name I can't remember, the bigger defensive tackle. He's with the Giants. Dexter.
Dexter Lawrence. Yeah,
Dexter Lawrence.
Klein Farrell. I mean, there's just a lot of defensive line guys. They were just
and they just had Brian Breesy, and then they had another guy.
Brian Breesy. Yep.
Yeah. So it's just you talk about Hall and Valai reshaping the cornerback and safety room with just stacking classes. We mentioned that, I think, on the last pod, talking about, how much the safety group has improved.
Yeah.
You see the same thing with Chavis and Bates in terms of on the defensive line group.
Yep.
But I think this puts OU interior wise. OU is done.
Well, that's a lot of good content, Chris. You're rolling over there at Sooners 360. Everyone, you can find him on his Patreon there. He's got his little Sooners 360 Patreon.com, and you're not gonna find someone with as much content as him, man. We appreciate you hopping on. We can't keep up with all the recruiting like that, man. You're in depth with it. It's awesome.
Hey, that was a good recruiting update by Chris. Mason coming on again, talking about Floyd Boucard and some of the other guys that are still hanging out there, whether it's offensive line or, edge rushers, whatever. There's a few carrots still dangling out there. But pretty much, the recruiting class, 25 class is, I'm not going to say it's coming to a close, but man, we're 95% there,
Yeah.
Most of the guys that are on there,
filling spots, man. Filling spots.
Todd Bates, the last couple of years, man, he's earned his stripes. That guy's filled a couple of really good classes. That first year he came in, we weren't too sure, but he's starting to stack them now.
Yeah, you and I were both worried with that DJ Hicks recruitment, right?
Fell through.
We thought it was all locked in, loaded. Here, take some time, right? Bates comes in, whole new staff, whole new everything, new head coach, new all of it, new program. And, Todd Bates has had success at Clemson. We've been patiently waiting. He almost got DJ Hicks if it wasn't for a giant contract, which that was completely beyond his control. But, now we can start to see it, man. He's got Dominic Williams, signed free agent this year, and then he went and snagged David Stone, and then he went and snagged Boucard. Wow. I mean, you're win after win after win. These guys are not, just even second tier. These guys are like the elite of whatever they're in, like the free agency, the 24 class, the 25 class. And when Chris was talking about the 26 class and how we might get 3 classes in a row and another, we're going to go through another couple of free agent periods. Guys, I mean, we're going to end up just reloading interior defensive linemen.
Yeah.
Great time to be excited.
Yep. Recruiting wins need to turn into game wins. Once we start winning on the field, especially in the SEC, those defensive line recruiting classes will just start pouring in. Hey, while we're thinking about it, don't want to forget about our sponsor right now. Go visit Woodworks Distillery. I got my glass here too.
Nice.
If you're up in the North Metro, Woodworks Distillery, I want to say it's off Britain.
Yeah, craft distillery in part of Oklahoma City, man. David was being modest, but I mean, this is like a serious craft distillery in Oklahoma City. David Wood, the owner, I mean, good dude, great guy. We had a fun conversation with him, but this is a legit craft distillery in Oklahoma City. One hasn't existed until he opened one up, and he was being, modest, naming off some other distilleries. And I'm like, no, you walk in this place. I mean, it's massive.
It's elaborate.
They've got 3 different gins. They got award-winning vodka. They got a bourbon and a rye. It's a legit craft distillery smack dab in the middle of Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
For all you bourbon drinkers, vodka drinkers, gin. I mean, support your craft distilleries.
Yeah. We've got a future podcast destination too down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can give you maybe a little virtual tour of the place when we do our podcast.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah.
Yeah.
Get your GoPro, Rob.
Yeah, get my GoPro.
Walk around.
Yeah. It's a nice place. It's like a lounge. Like you mentioned it. It's almost like a cigar lounge. Like you can't smoke in there, obviously, but it's they got that feel, big plush seats and leather seats, and everything's kind of like you got like these little pods, like little sections, so you kind of have a little bit of privacy, or a little bit, have your own little area and have a sip of some craft bourbon. And like I said, it's massive. And then we met the live music, right? The guy that was just riffing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, live music and all that.
Marty.
Marty.
Yeah. So he does. I think he said he was there once a week. Is that right? But his name's Marty Copeland. And he just goes in there and just riffs, just has fun. I don't know. It's a cool, chill atmosphere, man. I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Agreed. Yeah. Do you have any other comments on the recruiting class right now?
We're killing it, man. This is it takes time. I think when got a whole new staff, it takes time to get your program, your culture. You get Schmitty back, you get the strength and conditioning, you get people on the road recruiting. A lot of players are, they want to see it with their eyes, right? And last year, I think they got to actually see with their eyes a team that got better across the board everywhere. And now these recruiting classes, they can have something to sell, and they've got the culture. They've got something to sell. Now we're going to the Champions League, the SEC, and BV and the whole staff and the players have another opportunity to lay down a whole nother level of good football that will keep building these classes out, where we're reloading quarterbacks, reloading interior defensive line, reloading O-line. And yeah, I mean, it's exciting to see it, man. It's taking some time, but whew.
Yeah. We haven't seen defensive recruiting like this in a long time.
We took a defensive tackle away from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
One that was on their board, like number one on their board. Like they wanted Boucard and they couldn't get him.
Yeah. Thanks
where we're at.
Thanks
today.
for retiring,
Wow.
Saban.
Yeah,
I appreciate
probably
Saban.
a little bit.
I don't know, but thank you, Nick.
Yeah.
So no, let's
wrap it up.
Yeah, let's wrap this up. Please like, follow, subscribe. You can see all of our social media down there at the bottom, or visit our website, championstandard.com, all one word. We're going to continue to build things out on there, and look forward to seeing you there. So we will see you next time. Boomer.
Sooner.